As promised, this week's topic is about lifelines. And basically what a lifeline is it's thread that you run through live stitches so that if you have to undo or rip out, it's going to make it a little easier to recover. And there are a couple of ways to put a lifeline in. You don't do it after a row has been knit. You do it on a live row of stitches. And I've thread up some dental floss. I tend to use dental floss when I do this, as it's kind of waxy and doesn't stick to the stitches, and it's pretty small. And what you do is you just make sure that you thread through the needle with the dental floss or yarn or whatever you're using, and you pull it through, and there you go. Now I've already placed one in here so you can see what it looks like. When you work that next row, what you want to do is make sure that you don't catch the lifeline in your work, because that would not be good. Then you'd have to cut it out. So I'm going to take care that I don't get it in there. Now, lifelines, in addition to letting you recover your work, they also are a way of marking rows if you want. If I put them in every 5 rows or every 10 rows, that enables me to help count my rows and my work when it's done. Now I'm going to work one more row, and then I'm going to do another way to put a lifeline in. And that is, if you have interchangeable needles, such as the ones that I'm using right now. These are Knitter's Pride wooden ones. Dreams, I think, is the brand. But Knit Pick, Chow Goo, any kind of interchangeable needle that has a tightening key, you can do this. And this is the needle I'm going to be knitting with next. And if you notice down here at the join, let's see if I can get this in. Yeah, I don't think it's going to focus very well, but there's a little hole. It's not a very big hole, so you're not going to be able to pull great big yarn through here, and you're not going to be able to use a tapestry needle. But what you want to do is find a very small needle or dental floss, which is kind of stiff, and I've actually threaded this up. It's a very small needle, and I'm going to run my dental floss through there. Okay? And I'm just going to hold it on the needle. Okay. Now, this is the needle I'm going to be knitting with. And I don't have many stitches on there, so I'm actually going to have to do a little bit of manipulation. You can see that if you're working on a real project where you got a lot of stitches, it would make more sense. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to work those stitches, and then I'm going to make sure that I catch my stitches on this dental floss. And I'm just going to shove them down, and there you go. I've inserted my lifeline the same way as if I had thread it through a needle, but I don't risk splitting stitches if I do that. Whenever you run a needle through, you can split the stitches. Now I'm going to work a row, and then we'll see what we actually are using these lifelines for. Now, in practicality, I rarely put in lifelines unless I'm dealing with a stitch pattern like lace or cables, where if I have to undo a lot, I might be almost suicidal. Oops, I pulled that right out. Yeah, well, that's another thing you have to be careful about. We'll just take that one out. You need to be sure that you don't pull it out, and that is a disadvantage of dental floss. So, I'm working along, and I see that I've made a mistake, and I take my stitches off the needle, and then I rip out, and when I get to the place where the lifeline is, it's going to hold those stitches in place, and I cannot undo them. And then all I have to do is put those stitches back on the needle. Now, as I mentioned in my last week's blog, when you put the stitches back on the needle, you want to be careful that you don't twist them the wrong way. But if you do, it's not that big of a deal. Oops, see, now that stitch has been pulled through. You can always work them through the back, and that's going to save the situation. Now this is essential. I've worked some things with very complicated lace patterns, and that's where you really want to do this, because trying to figure out in a pattern, was that row 37 of the lace pattern or was it row 39? If you make it a practice to always put those lifelines in on every 10 rows or something, it's going to make it a lot easier to recover. And you can leave them in as long as you want if you're using them for counting.